3 Crossing Paths. Chapter 3. Greenland. Finally they arrived at their destination, a place of the midnight sun, where the ground was white and frozen. A large white polar bear was resting at the edge of the water, relaxing in the snow. He watched the ship come into the bay and saw the dolphins swimming beside the ship. This must be what Zlatromi was waiting for, he thought. A small rowing boat was coming down from the ship. Some Inuit sailors were carrying someone wrapped in blankets and in a survival bag. The 3 of them entered the boat. The dolphins were jumping in and out of the water along the rowing boat. An Inuit sailor rowed the boat to the shore and near to where Zork stood. Zork moved into the water, pulled the boat onto the sand. The dolphins moved close to Zork, who in acknowledgement for their work touched their noses. The Inuit greeted Zork reverentially, and Zork gently lifted the unconscious woman, secured her in his grip, bowed to the Inuit, and started to run up the hill. The captain and the first mate were watching in wonderment from the deck. Was this being, which looked like a polar bear, Zlatromi? They wondered. When the crew came back on board, the captain asked if the bear was Zlatromi. "No, that is Zork, who works with Zlatromi," answered the Inuit. "But how can that be? He looks like a polar bear, and he talks," questioned the captain in disbelief. "Zlatromi has made Zork who he is," responded the yeoman. The captain nodded and wondered how this Zlatromi made Zork human. Zork continued to run with a power known to his breed. He knew time was at a premium. The woman, still unconscious, may experience permanent damage unless he could get treatment for her soon. In the distance he saw a hole in the snow, on the edge of the cliff, a bear hole. He plunged in, head and arms first, closely wrapped around the woman. She is almost as small as one of his pups, he thought. He slid down through the hole, deep inside the snow. Finally he reached a solid surface underneath. The ground was earth, but it was covered in sparkling crystalline shapes. Several beings, some in human form, some not, came to meet him and directed him to a room. The room had a solid quartz crystal table in the middle, and on it Zork placed the woman. The table rose from the ground like a miniature volcano. A sound of gurgling liquid came from inside. It wasn't lava. It was the sound of crystals regenerating. The crystals grew at great speed. Kira, unconscious, was lying on the crystal table. Heat started to rise inside. The color changed while the crystals were reproducing themselves at great speed. Kira absorbed the energy and began to glow like a radiated fish. Zork talked to the head of the community, the leader, who walked in. He was an extremely tall being, with a cover of golden fine white hair. He had 2 dark, impenetrable eyes. His eyes looked like the deepest part of the ocean, unknown and unfathomable depth. There was a good reason Zlatromi was the leader, a being with sublime control and a mysterious background. He came from another world. He almost admitted to that. Zlatromi requested that this woman be brought to him, and she wasn't the only one. Others had been brought and sent back again. He didn't appear concerned about her condition. He was happy with the crystals. "She is recovering well. She will actually be stronger than she was," Zlatromi said to Zork, but as if talking to himself. "You have done well, Zork. It was a close call this time. The dolphins kept her longer in the water than desired. I must go and speak to the office. I will return when she is fully conscious. Zork, you do not have to stay on guard." Zlatromi touched his paw and left. Zork experienced that same surge of energy and calm each time Zlatromi made physical contact. Zork stood watching the woman. Her breathing was becoming more normal and even. He looked at this cavernous dwelling, a circular room, like all the rooms here, smoothly and beautifully carved out of rock. The rock or crystal took on its own life and created patterns on the surface. It healed itself as well as anyone else who was in contact. Zork had heard about this from his ancestry. He had an epigenetic sense of the power of the crystals. Zlatromi discovered this city, but it was always believed he created it by communing with the rock and making his needs known to the crystal. The Greenlanders and Danes gave up mining here many years ago. He thought how the humans didn't know how to work with nature. They fought and destroyed it. If they realized how cooperative most life forms were, then they would have known the rocks do not see themselves as separate, but apart. Slattromi knew this. He was a being completely in harmony with the universe. I'm sure he communes his needs to the crystals, and they in turn obligingly grow in that way, thought Zork. Zork needed to go. He realized how hungry he was. He didn't want to eat until he had completed his mission of bringing the woman to Slattromi. Kira, eyes closed but awake, started to feel inside her body and think how different it felt. There was an energy flowing through, like she had been plunged into a socket. Slowly consciousness of her last memories started to come back. She quickly opened her eyes. She wasn't in the B&B where she thought that's where she would find herself, but in a brownish crystal chamber. She sat up quickly. It was well lit, but the light seemed to be emanating from behind the walls. The walls were all circular, no windows, no doors, just this rock table that she was lying on. It looked cold and uncomfortable, but it was surprisingly comfortable. She looked up, and standing near the wall stood a tall creature covered in golden white fine hair. The eyes were so dark and contrasted strikingly against his hair. The face could be human or animal, intense, alert, highly intelligent, but not evil. "Welcome, Kira," he said. Kira startled and got up from the table. "Where am I?" she asked. "You are in northeast Greenland. I am Slattromi and have invited you here." Memories began racing around Kira's mind. What was the last thing she remembered? The dolphins, swimming with the dolphins, the icy cold water. She thought she froze to death. "I'm sorry, but the last memory I have is entering the freezing cold water and swimming with the dolphins," said Kira. "Yes, very good. I was worried that the arduous journey in the cold could have damaged your brain, but I'm glad to see you are remembering well. The dolphin and his partner brought you to me. Most of the journey was made on a Danish ship, which rescued you when they found you with the dolphins in the North Sea. They brought you to Greenland. The journey was risky, but we have been unable to reach you before. Now I must take you somewhere. All will be explained. Come." At that moment, Zork re-entered the chamber. Kira felt fear tensing her muscles. She focused on staying calm and alert, watchful but not reactionary. Her body responded much quicker than she had experienced before. Her mind appeared to communicate to her body the new intent instantaneously. She felt calm, alert, and watchful. The body and mind were one. What the mind thought, the body did at the same time. She knew about the power of the mind, but never had she felt it like this before. She blurted out, "What's happened to my body?" Slattromi appeared to be smiling, or at least the eyes were twinkling. "Your body has been reprogrammed and healed by the laws of nature. You are now like the rocks in this chamber," he said enigmatically. "It is like my mind and body are in complete synchrony and harmony," said Kira. "Just how nature works. Those feelings will only get stronger, more acute, more developed. Come, this is Zork. Zork will be your companion while you are here," said Slattromi. Her body responded positively to Zork, as if it shared a memory with him. Zork gave her his paw, face out. She lightly touched it. A feeling of calm and trust emanated through her. He was her friend. "Hello, I'm Kira, which you must know, but you are strangely familiar to me. Have we had contact before?" "Yes, I carried you here from the shore," said Zork, a bit ruffled from the feeling moving through his body from her touch. There was a shared history and future here. He could feel the thin strands of life tying them together. No wonder Slattromi put us together. Kira felt something too, but she felt she needed to be careful, not to over-imagine things. There is too much she needed to know and understand. Slattromi appeared to walk through the wall, but with closer inspection, Kira saw that there was a wide side gap between the circular wall, and she followed through a small passageway with Zork behind her. They entered a long tunnel with walls, ceilings, and floors made of the same crystalline surface as in the chamber. "What is this rock?" Kira asked Slattromi. "This rock is the building blocks of Earth. The core is this mineral. The Danes tried mining it, but found it very difficult and not viable financially." Zork thought he was sure Slattromi played a part in that. He remembered when all those engineers and miners were drilling into his precious land, feeling the tragedy of it and wondering where he was going to move. It lasted for a few years. The noise alone was terrible. The drilling reverberated on the icebergs and sent the sound across great areas. Icebergs started to fall under the drilling vibrations. Then finally it stopped. From that time, about 30 years ago, a national park was founded, and nature resumed its balance. When everyone left, all those Danes, scientists and engineers, Slattromi came and spoke to Zork. Prior to that, Zork had never spoken to any other being than his own kind, and even then conversation was empathetic. He was fascinated because he could speak to this strange-looking creature who was almost bear, almost man, but neither. Like him, but not like him, more animal than human. Slattromi led the way through the empty, quiet passageway. Suddenly he stopped, turned and looked at Kira. His look was piercing. It went deep into her, saw every neural pathway in her brain, saw hidden thoughts. Kira was frozen. She felt she was being violated. She felt vulnerable, bare, exposed. Slattromi knew that. That is nothing. You must be prepared for what will happen. Now ask to close your mind, shield yourself. Kira did, and suddenly he was no longer inside. She felt safe. Slattromi twinkled. You are now ready to come in and meet everyone. With that he turned around and went through a spiral passageway until he was at the entrance to a large chamber full of noise and many different life forms.